Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Maia Benson, and she is the Chief Business Officer at FlavorCloud, but she's also, she's all around the industry, I'll say, and she knows what's going on from the fulfillment side, supply chain, distribution, logistics, all of those things, and she's got her hands in a little bit of everything, and she knows pretty much everyone, I think, too. I see her all the time in all these different events, so I'm happy we're bringing her on. We're going to tap into some of her knowledge on the FlavorCloud side, specifically around tariffs and cross-border shipments, and talking about some of the impact that tariffs have had on 3PLs and how 3PLs can kind of de-risk and mitigate some of the risks that their clients may be feeling from a tariff perspective. And we're also going to talk about what's kind of the tariff outlook for 26. 25 was a little bit of a wild ride, so we'll see what 26 is going to be like. So, Maia, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. Happy holidays. Excited to be here. And wherever I am, I also certainly enjoy seeing you. So it feels like we are absolutely in the same shared network and friend circle. So great to
Yes.
be here.
Yeah, 100%. I got to say, the last couple of months, I do feel like our paths have crossed quite a few times. So it's good
Yeah.
so this time we're recording it, right? So it's very good to get you on, and looking forward to this conversation, talking with you. So you're with FlavorCloud. So tell us a little bit about FlavorCloud first, before for people that maybe are not familiar.
First of all, we're not a vaping company.
Sure. Yeah.
Many people hear Flavor Cloud, and the most frequent thing I get is, "Oh, are you a vaping company?"
Yeah.
It's like when I first joined Shopify in 2016, and for a solid year, I knew said, "How's work going at Spotify?" so,
Yeah.
so yes, not a vaping company. We help merchants of all sizes with all of their global commerce, logistics, and compliance. And we're going to nerd out on some of this fun together, Kevin. But we really are the abstraction layer, the easy button for ensuring orders get fulfilled around the globe seamlessly, as well as all the data that has to be true and cost that has to be true to adhere to compliance, right? Every time you cross a border, you're going into a sovereign country that gets to make its own regulations. And so
Sure.
you need to be compliant. And then all that cost data is critical for shippers, 3PLs, brands, et cetera, to have for pricing strategy, right? So we'll have some probably fun going deeper on that as well, Kevin. But really, from checkout through end consumer delivery is where Flavor Cloud helps merchants sell more globally and get their orders delivered.
All right, fantastic, and obviously being in that space, right? I'm sure you're dealing with some of this tariff stuff that's going on, right? It's pretty important for the business that you're focused on, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned there, like, these countries get to make their own regulations, right? And I guess us as a country, the U.S. has been making some of those regulations this year, right? So as we're coming to the end of 2025, which has been, obviously a huge, I mean, tariff has probably been one of the biggest words of this year, you could say, if we were going to do a Spotify wrapped on on supply chain terms, potentially,
Totally.
right? A tariff would be way up there. So from your standpoint, I mean, what's the latest on tariffs right now as we're coming towards the end of the year, and maybe where do you think that's heading going into the new year?
I'm going to get to your question. I might probably rewind. I,
Sure.
I think from a 2025 perspective, coming into 2025, in fact, this morning I was just looking at our, we had a couple titles last year for our manifest panel, and one of them was
Sure.
literally 321 dies. Coming into 2025, many of us close to this space really saw, independent of any administration, candidly,
Hmm.
many wins, regulatory wins that had started well before 25 that we were pretty confident that would come to fruition in
Hmm.
25 in the form of especially de minimis being removed.
Sure.
So on one hand, we'll talk, I'll get to your question, but I do think many of us saw the writing on the wall that something at least like 321 and de minimis would be removed. So I don't think there was like surprise from that perspective. I
Yeah.
think what has been surprising that we've all lived through together and to be continue to see what happens in 26 together is just the volatility and the pace
Mm.
of change,
Yeah.
right? With new regulations getting put out every 2-3 weeks, being slightly changed at the last minute right before it takes effect. So just a lot of unpredictability has hit shippers and brands in how to predict their business, predict their margins,
Yeah.
right? So 2025, I think, has been given that volatility and given that difficulty on predicting their margins, been not only a stressful year from that volatility perspective, but also a lot of brands have stepped up and absorbed a lot of that tariff cost, right?
Mm.
And seen that impact in their margins. And I don't think, so I'll do a little bit of a preview on what we think for 26. I don't
Sure.
think that's going to I don't think that's going to stand for 2026. So I think we will see prices go up to recover and recoup some of that margin that brands have absorbed in 2025. So to
Mm.
your specific question, where are we at now? We've the good news is we've had kind of three chapters in 2025 to make things quite simple. We
Yep.
had the hammer come down 145% on made in China. I think there's
Yeah.
a first principle that also is helpful for the audience. Tariffs uh, are assigned, pegged to what the HS code is, what the good is, as well as the country of origin, where it's made. It doesn't matter where it's shipped from,
Mm.
right? So I go round and round with the Times and the Wall Street Journal behind the scenes, like, stop saying, right?
Yeah.
Imported from. That's not. I want to help the audience deeply understand how trade works. It's where it's made. Okay.
Yeah. Sure.
So I was back on your question, Kevin. Chapter 1 of 25 was the hammer came down, 145 on made in China, coming from anywhere, shipped in from Canada, shipped in from France, like didn't matter. Chapter 2 was a bunch of other countries got
Yeah.
30+% tariffs enacted for periods of time, right? And then some of that got, lowered or eliminated. And then this latest chapter 3 is the heat has definitely come down on made in China, but Vietnam and India, two big suppliers, still remain above 30%. So the volatility in the past 2 months feels like it's cooled down a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah.
Still in aggregate, we have record breaking number and quantity and breadth of tariffs in place.
Mm.
And that's current state. There's something incredibly important happening right now that you've probably been following, which is the Supreme Court
Sure.
is now looking at the administration's core first principle reason, or the lever that they've used to dynamically issue these tariffs under the Emergency Powers Act, so IEPA. So I think that's, when you say where are we at right now, we've got a little bit of exhale and at least known stability, and some of the tariffs have been reduced on the made in China for now. But we've also got this Supreme Court case
Yeah.
going on to understand whether those tariffs were legally put into place. And if they weren't, what happens to all the money we've taken from
Yeah.
those
Are
tariffs?
there refunds?
So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
it's an incredibly interesting case that's in flight in Q4. So that's to your question where we're at right now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really interesting too, because I think as we're recording this, I guess it was yesterday. I think I saw like Costco sued, right, as well, looking for refunds or
I
making sure
didn't
that they
catch
will get
that
that.
last night. Interesting.
Yes, yeah, that's kind of new, and they have sued the administration, I guess, to hopefully get refunds if that. I think if I'm following it correctly, that store if that case, deems that the tariffs were illegal, they want to make sure that they're going to get that back. It's very interesting. I mean, the volatility certainly has been a little crazy because I think people are just like, what do we do, right? Do we move our supply source? Do we not move our supply source? Because, one week it's like it's not viable, right? And then the next week it's like, well, it's still kind of viable, right? But you mentioned that, going into 26 now, right? You think that brands are not gonna like stand for it anymore, right? Or absorb, right? So they're
They're
gonna
not going to
increase
absorb it,
prices,
right?
right?
They've got to recover those margins. So I
Yeah.
think we're going to see pricing go up.
Hmm.
I think empowering shippers and brands with the data. So what we're doing a lot these days is what is the landed cost? What is that duty tax,
Yeah.
brokerage fee, import cost going to be per country, per SKU? And with that data, now that I know that, what's my pricing strategy to
Hmm.
still drive optimum conversion, right? Be competitive and market with the price, whilst considering what cost is on the table for the consumer, stroke the merchant to pay in terms of import duties and taxes. So I do think pricing's going up. Period. Hard stop. And data to inform what that pricing should be is a hot topic these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious, are you seeing, I guess, both from the brands that you just talked to in general, or the brands that are on the Flavor Cloud or using Flavor Cloud? Are you seeing that they are starting to migrate and shift, like where they're doing their production or where they're sourcing from? Are they making big changes like that?
I think that COVID, for many of kind of the mid to larger brands, really introduced the resilience concept of
Hmm.
having, we used to lazily call it China plus one, right? So
Sure. Yeah.
having more than one sourcing partner. Um, do I see enterprise brands changing their sourcing mix, diversifying their sourcing mix, even beyond what they did in COVID? Absolutely.
Hmm.
But many of them were pretty well positioned to have more than one sourcing strategic partner. So yeah, the answer is yes.
Hmm.
I think the bigger thing that we're seeing is uh, now that I know there's going to be tariffs that are volatile around the United States border. If I have business in Canada and
Hmm.
demand in Canada that's meaningful, if I have it in the UK, if I have it in the EU, why don't I just bypass these borders with these volatile tariffs and go right to the center of demand?
Mm.
So what we're
Okay.
seeing is a shift in how mid to enterprise brands and shippers think about where they place their inventory and what that import move is to optimize and benefit from different import duties and taxes policies, regulatory policies, costs on a per country basis. So we call this the regionalization of inventory, where you've
Okay.
just got new lanes of supply to regional demand centers around the globe to benefit from, again, different duties taxes paradigms, as well as when you bring inventory closer to consumers. We all know you're
Hmm.
burning less fuel to get the order delivered to them last mile, and so that's also valuable savings.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's very, very interesting. So in other words, you're saying, I guess instead of maybe somebody being having an inventory node like close to maybe the border of Canada and the U.S., they're just gonna bring that inventory into Canada directly
That's
instead,
right.
right? Right.
That's
Maybe
right.
have
So instead of
expanded nodes. Yeah.
China to the US and then the US outbound,
Sure.
that we call that the central model.
Hmm.
It's now China to the US for the US demand, China to Canada for the Canadian demand, et cetera, et cetera. So really
Got it.
regionalizing or localizing that inventory. It can be upside on the domestic transportation, fuel that you need to burn for the last mile, as well as the import duties and taxes paradigms.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and that makes a lot of sense. So let's talk a little bit about maybe the impact here on like the 3PL or the fulfillment providers, right? Because a lot of these brands, right? I mean, they're not doing the fulfillment themselves, right? They're relying on third party partners to do that. And how is that impacting, right? Because they're looking for the brand, right? Is obviously looking to try and save some of their margin, right? And probably trying to renegotiate some fulfillment rates, maybe to help do that. But what does the 3PL feel from their brands as the brands are going through some of these struggles to try and maintain some of that margin?
First of all, we're 2 days post Cyber Monday, so shout out to all of our 3PL
Yes.
friends that are in the thick of it. Thinking of all of you and know firsthand what you guys are going through. Um, I just had to push that plug, Kevin, given the where we are in the world. There's a lot of exciting stuff and impact on 3PLs given 2025 regulatory changes. So maybe we'll kind of bucket them and go through them one by one.
Sure.
First of all, there's a tremendous growth in 3PLs either acquiring or partnering with other 3PLs in the top consumer demand, e-commerce consumer demand countries,
Mm.
right? So there's really interesting evolution of, I'm a US only 3PL, I should have a Canadian partner,
Yeah.
right? I should buy a Canadian warehousing
Hmm.
provider, right? I'm a mid to enterprise brand and I have enough demand in Canada or UK or Australia or EU. I'm now going to change my criteria for which I evaluate 3PLs through
Mm.
to ensure that they have a global presence, right? So I think that is a tremendous shift that we've seen given the absolute cost and volatility in duties and tariffs in 2025. So that's one big lane. So if I don't have a global footprint today, might make sense to partner my way there, at least starting in Canada. If I do have a global footprint today, much more of a distinctive moat to market that to help brands that understand they can regionalize, right? And they can take advantage of that supply to demand center distribution model. So I think that's one big thing. I think the other big thing that's impacted 3PLs in 2025 is global shipping for many 3PLs has been a competency for years,
Hmm.
right? I can leverage UPS, I can leverage DHL, I can leverage FedEx, I can leverage the post office
Yeah.
to ship things around the globe, right? And even in 2025, I can do that in a way that's called DDU, where the consumer pays import duties and taxes, right?
Hmm.
So the mental model has been I can do global shipping,
Yeah.
compliance headache gets pushed onto the consumer, right? Or the merchant has an easy solve with some estimates and runs their business based on estimates and deals with the hard costs as they come in from the shipping carriers.
Mm.
I think what 2025 has done is said, wait a minute, now that compliance is a real thing,
Yeah.
right? You and I lived through COVID together.
Yeah.
Supply chain became this word that the average consumer on the street knew, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think in 2025, compliance now is maybe the new supply chain that we're all living through. I think as the borders have become less porous, as the regulatory gates have started to get more calcified, um, that compliance is now critical component to just shipping. So I think there's this mental model now for 3PLs where it's like, oh boy, what I used to think I could do for just shipping, this logisticsy thing, and by the way, I make money on that. a critical, most of my revenue component, an
Yeah.
important component of my business, that's not enough anymore,
Mm.
right? It's not just about global shipping anymore. You now have to comply. You have to have a compliance partner. And with volatility, what also makes a lot of sense is give me somebody that can guarantee cost, so that can give predictive costs to my brands and my customers, so
Yeah.
that they can manage their margin accordingly and have a successful business. So I think that's been the other evolution in 2025, is what used to be just thought of as global shipping. You and I have grown up in a world with lots of,
Yeah.
great global shipping providers. It's now not sufficient, right?
Mhm.
HTS code accuracy matters, right? Completion of the commercial invoice accurately matters, right? Uh, Estimating in a perfect world, guaranteeing duties, taxes, and fees costs matters. So I think those are two evolutions, that candidly I think in a lot of ways are very healthy for the 3PLs. It creates actually opportunities, right?
Okay.
3PLs that have global footprints, 3PLs that can make compliance seamless and friction free now have moats, right? And so two important areas where I think 25 has impacted 3PLs.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's very interesting to see that, and I've seen too, in just discussions with 3PLs, the ones that they're looking like to either partner or should we expand into another country, and brands too that were like, oh well, we were just shipping from the UK to the US, or somewhere in Europe, right? But now it's like it's getting too expensive to do that. Like we need to find a 3PL that's US based as well, and having like that diversification, even from a startup perspective, companies that are from the get go, like I prefer to like start with somebody that already has global presence too, because I
That's
know I'm
right.
going to expand in that way at some point. So it's very interesting there, and I'm curious too from the 3PL perspective. When we look at the brand portfolios that we may have within the
Mm.
3PL, right? eh, are there brands now that, because of these changes, are there brands that are potentially risky for a 3PL to have in their portfolio, and should they be assessing like where that country of origin is, and think that maybe this is not like a client I want to like bet on for the long term?
It's such an interesting question. So, um, if you're the CEO and leader of a 3PL,
Mm-hmm.
to date, you've probably had a portfolio risk management strategy.
Mm.
And frequently that risk management strategy's had, two primary vectors, and you might have great perspective here, Kevin, so jump on in. But the core acres that I've seen are really, do I have a portfolio that is risk mitigated by, I've got some cash cows
Yeah.
where I've got, deep moats with that are not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But so I've got a backbone here of uh, guaranteed volume effectively. So I have those cash cows. Do I have a segment that's printing labels pretty stably, but might have some churn and might have a mix? But like there's that middle segment of, yep, I print labels for them. Maybe not a cash cow, maybe not a moat, maybe it would see some churn, but pretty good business. And then you might have, hey, these are younger brands, these are growth brands. I'm taking a flyer, I'm taking a risk
Sure.
on investing in those. So that is one portfolio risk model that I've seen frequently applied. And then the other thing is, many of us have been in this game long enough to have lived through recessions,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you have recession-proof SKU portfolio risk management, right? So as time goes on and you build these amazing long-term partnerships with your brands, you might look at your brand portfolio through more recession-proof, less recession-proof SKUs. So those are two risk models in the D2C fulfillment space that I frequently see employed. I think what 2025 did for us is say, wait a minute, is there now another consideration set
Yeah.
around what is the country of origin sitting in my warehouse? And given the volatility to major supply sources and centers, China, India, Vietnam, most impacted in 2025. If I've got a lot of those SKUs, fine. I just got to know now that my brand, my customer, their cost basis went up a lot,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
so, what does that do to their business? Do they have enough pricing power, margin power to still grow and win? um, uh, Versus other country of origin SKUs that are less impacted. So I think the country of origin sourcing lens becomes an interesting one for consideration on the portfolio risk side.
Yeah, yeah, because I think it's a super interesting layer to kind of add in there, right? Because as you talked about earlier, it's like, well, going in 26, some of these brands are going to be like we can't absorb this anymore. Like we got to increase our prices or do something differently to preserve that margin and continue to grow and stay alive ultimately, right?
Yeah, and like you and
Yeah.
I, prime example
Mhm.
when Feb March hit and 145 for China went
Yeah.
up. You and I literally saw brands stop importing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's going to cost me more to import it than I can get on the sales side. I will be upside down, literally upside down if I do this. If you had a warehouse full of that,
Hmm. Yeah.
right, you're exceptionally exposed.
Yeah.
I just, as 3PL, CEOs are listening and operators are listening, I think that's another thoughtful consideration set.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, because there's, I was going to say, like, as that price increases too, it's like, oh, as the price increase, does their volume decrease as well? Because their consumer is now like,
A hundred
this is a little
percent.
more than I want to spend for whatever this thing is, right? And now they see themselves in a little bit of a different market, which might be a little bit smaller, right, from a price perspective. So,
Yeah, you nailed it. So,
yeah.
how commoditized is the SKU? What's the order value? What's that margin profile? And how much do they have to play with that to manage this volatility
Yeah.
and can win at the checkout, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, spot on.
Yeah, 100%. And so if we look at all of these kind of challenges and shifts that we've been talking about here, how does Flavor Cloud kind of come into play, and how do they help support the brands or the 3PLs to be able to navigate this a little better and make it a little easier, I guess, to sift through as well?
Yeah, I think from the 3PL perspective, uh, Flavor Cloud really helps with that compliance component,
Hmm.
right? Period, hard stop. Like it's not just global shipping anymore, it's compliance, and that's hairy and that's yucky. And 3PLs don't want to be in the business of HS codes, they don't want to be in the business of landed costs.
Yeah.
So that abstraction layer, that easy button is incredibly important. And then secondarily, we've got a multi-carrier global network that's built for resiliency. Kevin, we should pause. We've lived through 3 Canada Post strikes in 1 year, basically
Yeah.
over two
Yeah, that's
quarters,
pretty crazy too. Yeah.
right? We had DHL Express in and out of Canada go
Yeah.
down for 3 weeks.
Hmm.
So multi-carrier, just like we've seen it strategically take over domestic, is critical for cross-border so that you're not caught up in the volatility of the carriers. Also, trying to dynamically keep up with the compliance requirements that are changing at the
Hmm.
border all the time, right? This doesn't just affect brands, but the actual infrastructure of the carriers as well. So I forgot the rest of the question, but yes, that is. I forget where we were.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I was
I lost the thread.
yeah, yeah. The question was like, how is Flavor Cloud supporting
Yeah, so
those?
multi-carrier
Yeah.
network,
Hmm.
global network that can move parcels through pallets anywhere to anywhere, with great rates and candidly, revenue share like 3PLs are used to, making money on transportation, which is usually 60 to 70% of the whole nut. So
Yeah.
that's how we help, and we're proud to partner with them and help. The other thing that we shouldn't also forget is many merchants want to go global and actually have latent
Mm.
consumer demand, right? They've got French consumers coming to their site. They've got Canadian consumers coming to their site. It's just felt like a very heavy lift to access
Yeah.
them, right? And so when 3PLs can say, wait a minute, I can help unlock new volume, new
Mm.
orders for this merchant, for this brand with an easy button partner, I think that growth lens still matters. So maybe that's a great segue, Kevin, to maybe just what we've also seen in terms of the impact
Sure.
of the tariffs on in 2025, and maybe you've heard maybe my preview for 26. We still see a ton of global cross-border commerce growth,
Okay.
right? So it's been growing faster, about 4x faster than domestic
Really?
through
Wow. Okay.
2025. It's still a very strong growth opportunity. So brands should open up their ears, find partners to make access, to turn on that volume in really easy, simple ways. So there's still a there.
Mm.
That said, do tariffs increase prices and does that affect demand? Yes, it
Mm.
does.
Yeah.
Right? So we have seen continued exciting positive growth in 2025 even with all this volatility.
Mm.
But is it as is the growth rate been as much as fast as high as it would have been without the volatility? Yeah,
Yeah.
probably it's been a little depressed, right? So US and Canada had reciprocal tariffs going on,
Hmm.
right? So that's a very important trade lane. It's a huge trade lane. That's absolutely been impacted, and then we've also seen US and UK be impacted. So that's just a segue, an important kind of point of context
Yeah.
on what we saw.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really, really interesting to hear it and kind of, you know, the supply chain is so interesting because, all of these things have like these kind of ripple effects throughout, right? Like we talked about the impact on the brand, but then there's also the impact on the 3PL and then everybody else involved. And it's incredibly interesting to look at it all. So as we look towards, 2026, we kind of talked a little bit about, what you think is going to happen from a tariff perspective. But I'm curious, like in the overall fulfillment world, what do you think that is going to look like for 2026 in general?
I mean, I've been saying this for 18 months, probably close to 2 years, Kevin, and this will be a great discussion set. That we would start to see a consolidation in
Hmm.
3PLs. I think we're finally there in 26.
Sure. Yeah.
So 3PL unit economics are tough, period, hard stop. And with cost of goods going up, with fuel going up, you've just got a baseline of costs increasing. 3PLs, I think, are working with even tighter and tighter margins.
Yeah.
So I do think we'll maybe finally my timing meter on this. I do think we're going to start to see more consolidation of 3PLs, and we're starting to see it. I think in ways in terms of acquisitions that you're hearing from
Yeah.
the Storage of the world, the Carts of the world, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we'll see acceleration there. I think that we are also living through not just a tariff volatility macro force on the 3PLs, but I don't know, this little thing called AI, this
Hmm.
little thing called mass investment in robotics and automation. So I think those, pressures and macro forces just make running a 3PL even more challenging these days, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of tech out there that's been funded. There's a
Hmm.
lot of noise. And I think 3PLs that can really test and learn on their path to automation and AI in these early days are kind of best positions. But to ignore it, I don't think is something
Yeah.
that anybody can afford to do.
Yeah, exactly. And and we were at the Ship Hero AI and Logistics event
Yes.
together, and I think one of the big takeaways I took from there was like, if you're not looking at AI and not putting AI into your 3PL at this point, right? There's somebody else that is, and they're already way ahead of you, and you're going to be far behind. So I think that's a great point there about the technology and trying to
You,
bring it in
you
to
got
start
to
ahead.
be testing and playing with it. Where that's
Yeah,
the phase that we're in. It's not having material impact yet on P&Ls,
yeah,
right? But you have to be testing and playing with it, and candidly architecting the 3PL structure, underlying data sets to be clean, standardized, et cetera, to have meaningful experimentation. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, fantastic to speak to you today and get some of your insights here. I'm happy we could get you on the podcast, and great to talk about some of these amazing things that are happening in the supply chain. Right. Uh, certainly keeps it interesting for sure. So it's a pleasure to speak with you. And if people are interested in connecting with you or learning more about
Hit me up
Flavor
on
Cloud,
LinkedIn. You
what's the
can
best
find me
way?
at Maya at FlavorCloud.com. Doors wide open. Looking forward to hearing from the audience. And Kevin, so great to see you. I hope to see you on a tennis court next time.
Yeah, we should do that,
You
definitely.
keep doing the industry circuit. Hope to see you on the court for a shared passion.
Absolutely. And we'll definitely put all that information for people at thenewwarehouse.com and in the show notes here so they can connect with you. So, Maya, it's been a pleasure. Thank you once again for your time on the show today.
And you too, Kevin. Happy holidays.
You too. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video here on our YouTube channel, The New Warehouse Podcast, and I appreciate you tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video in particular, make sure you like it as well. And if you want to get this great t-shirt that you see in the video behind me, Warehouses Are Sexy, head to warehousesAreSexy.com and get your own.